When it comes to live action adaptations of anime or manga, I usually despise it because there is ultimately no reason for it to exist. Anime is already a good enough unique medium that can stand on its own. It doesn't need some form of legitimization or boost from the standard live action format. Western live action anime should count as a human rights violation. I can only remember liking Speed Racer, but it's been forever since I watched it, so I don't know if it still holds up. But I would rather the West just not touch anything anime or Japanese related now more than ever, to be honest. But what about live action anime actually from Japan? Well, those mostly suck too. I do find them more entertaining to watch because they at least try to retain the tone, story beats, and looks of the characters, which give a lot of them this genuine campy vibe that I find charming. I could go on about live action anime, maybe even make a series about that. Nope, just kidding. I've seen most of them and they aren't really worth it, but I do find some of them interesting to watch, like the one for today's video. So let's talk about the manga and adaptation of the violence action. There isn't really much to the background of the manga that I could find. It's a series written by Shin Sawada and illustrated by Renji Asai, being first uploaded in 2016 to Yaoraka Spirit's Japanese webcomic website. The manga is still ongoing as of I'm making this video, but it takes really long hiatuses due to the author's poor health, which I wish wasn't so common with mangaka, but it is what it is. It doesn't really take long to get caught up and reach the recent chapters, like I was able to get through it in about a day. Both Sawada and Asai were involved in the writing of the adaptation, with the director being Tochiro Ruto, who directed The Way of the House Husband, which is another adaptation of something I like, so I might check it out. I don't really want to go into every actor's background, but a lot of them were involved with other anime adaptations, and Kamen Rider, which I'm a big fan of. Kamen Rider Black, Kuga, and Fours are my top 3. I might want to talk about them someday, but not in a review sense, more like just talking about what I like about them. Anyway, to give an example of what I was talking about, the main character, Kei, who is being played by Kana Hashimoto, was also in Ass Class, 2 Gintama movies, Yawamushi Pedal, Saki Kei, and Kaguya-sama, and so on. There is just a lot of talent involved in this movie, but let's finally just get into it. The manga's story does not have a central plot. It's about a girl named Kikuno Kei, who is a university student studying bookkeeping and a hit woman with a sort of superhuman-like level of reflexes. She works for Puroren All Natural Girls Express Service, which is set up like a dating site. She just takes on various random hits while meeting other characters in the process, while also doing mundane slice of life things. That's basically what the manga is about. Kei's personality is weird. She is oddly upbeat and normal in some of the worst situations. She's a filthy Fujo. She has a thing for something as mundane as home designing. She talks about having hope no matter how small it is. She has this dream where she's in a flower bed being given advice from some random voice. She's overall just an odd girl, which makes her interesting to watch. There is also Zura-san. He is bald but wears a bulletproof hairpiece and drives Kei around. Watanabe, who has a bowl cut and is kind of a wimp, plus he is a K-Semp. Big Boss, or shopkeeper, who is a bit of a hard ass and runs a ramen shop where she makes really bad tasting ramen. Daria, whose parents were killed and she was raised by the killer who did it, so because of this she has a way more serious personality than the others. There is also plenty of antagonists, with my favorite being Michitaka-kun, who uses a nail gun to attack people, likes randomly singing pop songs unprovoked, and follows some bizarre 3-strike rule for killing people. He is just a complete Chad. Then there's Kaneko, who is the killer of Daria's parents and the one who helped train her to be a killer. He's basically Fat Bastard, the character with a goofy face. There is plenty more antagonists, but those 2 are the most relevant for this adaptation.
The violence action.
The movie opens with our girl Kei rescuing a kidnapped actress from some Yakuza goons, and we get our first bit of action showing off the superhuman-like way she fights. Also Sony product placement. The way Kei fights is more like an anime gun fu John Wick type of style. They do a pretty good job of capturing that aspect of her from the manga. One of the things I don't usually like is the overuse of these quick cuts, or whatever you call it, in between the action. It's at least done in a a comedic way here by having Zura-san look at sexy girls while waiting for Kei to be done. Kei then returns the actress back to producer-san, who was the one that hired her, and we get Kei bullying Zura-san afterwards. While I do enjoy this opening, I easily prefer the manga's chapter 1 over it. I think it does a better job of establishing the mundane, casual, dark tone of the series, and I just prefer the doctor who Kei helps in the story overall. At school, Kei's friend Rika-chan and bowl cut boy Watanabe make an appearance. We are reminded Kei is a filthy Fujo and Watanabe is a wimp.
エロ本じゃんこれ聞くのこんなの好きだったのエロ悪党ども
Then Kei runs into Toronto, a minor character from chapter 2 of the manga, and to be honest with you family member, chapter 2 is basically the main story of this movie, but they added so much to it that we'll talk about it later. The next scene is a recreation of chapter 5, with Kei meeting Zura-san and the boss, but there's a dead guy on the floor who was killed by one of the other hit girls, yet none of the cleaners came to dispose of the body. However, Watanabe shows up, so Kei and Watanabe eat some of the boss's shitty ramen, but the guy who was thought to be dead from poison comes back, who holds Zura-san hostage, but little did he know that his hair is bulletproof, and him and Kei dispose of him easily. This is also the moment where Watanabe decides he wants to work with them to get closer to Kei. Afterwards, we get the introduction of my favorite character in the manga, the absolute Chad, Sigma, Omega, and Alpha. He is just such a fun character to watch because of how bizarre he acts, and he's almost Terminator-like when it comes to trying to take this guy down. If Kei put all her stats into Dex, then Michitaka is a strength build. His introduction also leads us into the main meat of the movie. There's a conflict happening in the most powerful Yakuza clan, the Denmagumi, where Sandame, who is the leader, is testing his members to see who is a worthy successor to lead the clan. However, his second in command, Kinoshita, is embezzling millions from the Denmagumi's businesses. His goal is to try and stealthily take over the clan with the help of his sidekick Ayabe, who runs one of the companies. But Ayabe gets kidnapped by the rival of Kinoshita, Kenitsu Gumi, who has his own intentions of leading the Denmagumi. So where Kei comes in is she gets a hit from Kinoshita to kill Kenitsu. Kenitsu ends up dying from a sniper shot by Daria, who just shows up randomly accompanying Kei. Sandame catches word of this and sends Michitaka after Kei. I should probably talk about Toronto because he is a key figure in all of this. In chapter 2 of the manga, Toronto is an accountant who just stole the secret stash of money from the company of whoever their boss is here. The reason is never really given, but his personality here was more of a laid-back smart guy, with him not being sleazy like the other guys in the clan, a basic shady Yakuza type. However, in the adaptation, they gave him this whole backstory with his paralyzed friend Kura, who he looks after when a hit they were on goes completely wrong. I like the added backstory, but he just seems a little too virtuous to the point it seems odd that he's even working with Yakuza to begin with. Anyway, Daria is in the movie like I mentioned earlier, and we get a nice mini reference to chapter 9 with her looking for a new home to stay at, but the moment is ruined by Kaneko, who looks a little different than he does in the manga, and his name is Kaneko instead of Fukami. For some reason, I believe they combined Fukami and this other character called Mizuno, who is the one who taught Daria her sniping skills, into one character. So Kei and Daria escape and run into good old Michitaka-kun, who just wipes the floor with them. I mean, he does beat Kei in the manga, but afterwards he's just a complete joke. It's nice to see the adaptation make him way more cooler than he actually is. He stabs Daria with a Sharpie, not joking, and she actually goes to the hospital for this. This scene is pulled from chapter 11, which had a completely different setup. A random person who Kei was hired to protect got injured, so she takes him to the hospital. It's still a moment where Watanabe acts like a Chad. He tells Kaneko in this situation, instead of the random bad guy from the manga, to leave because it's a neutral ground where people are not allowed to cause violent outbreaks. Kei shows up and so he does leave. The next day, Kei is in the hospital with Daria. She runs into Terano again and they play Japanese checkers. We see a flashback of Terano and Kura in the hit that went completely south. Sadly, Kura unalives himself after talking about his dream of going to the shithole that is New York. He just didn't want to be bedridden for his whole life and knew he was gonna die anyway. Now we finally reached a part that is more in line with the rest of the chapter where Kei is hired to hit Terano. Management hasn't decided how they want him to die, so Kei takes a break to study some bookkeeping. Terano helps her because he is a surprisingly good teacher. Meanwhile, Kinoshida's balls get exposed and he has a meltdown with Saidame ordering him to get back the money. Too bad Terano burns it, so now they're coming to kill him. While Kei is leaving, she gets booby grabbed and Terano metal pipes the dude who did it. He hires Kei to help him get out of this mess. Unlike the manga where Kei just does her thing and then they go their own separate ways, we get way more than that. They pulled a chase scene from chapter 4 with Michitaka that had a completely different setup and characters involved. I preferred the manga version, but I still like it here. Kei has a rematch with Michitaka where he completely pummels her again and uses his signature nail gun. Kaneko gets killed by Daria and it's pretty anticlimactic compared to the manga. Kei gets motivated by this random voice in her dream. It's never explained even in the manga who that is, but since it's a female voice, my guess is maybe her mom. Michitaka completely obliterates Kinoshida's men and is even about to kill Terano until Kei returns for the salty run back. She finally wins, but Kinoshida catches up to them and Terano reveals he hid the rest of the money in the safe. When he hands over the key to him, he instead decided to Aloha snack bar, and that's the end. Terano is still alive somehow, by the way, and so is Michitaka-kun, and that's the violence action.
ザバイオレンスアクション
Production wise, the visual look of the movie is basic, which is fine I guess. Besides these annoying camera cuts, it really captures the normal plain look the manga was going for. The music is also pretty good, but it's a lot of licensed stuff so I can't really play it. As for performances, Zuru-san, Michitaka, and Sandame are probably my favorite, but everyone does a good job and each character has a quirk to their personality that makes them easier for me to remember. Although for Kei, I thought she was fine up until the third act. She was too over emotional over Terano. Kei in the manga is like mentally unbreakable and relaxed even in the worst situations, which I find cool about her character and makes the casual slice of life and Hitman dark humor aspect of the manga work, but ultimately it's fine. In conclusion, I think the violence action is a decent adaptation of the manga. I do like how they pulled from different parts of the manga and managed to piece it together into one story, while the main story itself is pretty low stakes, as in it's just a basic Yakuza power succession plot. It's the characters and their weird quirky personalities that really carry and make watching this entertaining, with my main issues just being the third act and Terano somehow surviving and exploding for some reason. Also, where are all the police in all of this? It's better to not think about it. I honestly still want an anime adaptation of this though, done by my favorite anime studio, Studio Bones. I feel as though they would nail the plain, simple slice of life look of the manga, but go completely ham when it comes to the action scenes. Anyway, it's just average, not super amazing, not super ass, just good enough, so I give violence action, live action, 5.5 out of 10. I'll see you when I see you.